On the evening of May 14th, with the day before the Sabbath, the evening of May 14th, David Ben-Gurion, who would be designated the new Prime Minister of Israel, went on national radio that was broadcast around the world that on this date, May 14th, 1948, we accept the United Nations plan, and we declare, therefore, that we are the state of Israel as of May 14th, 1948. The response was that 5 Arab nations declared war on the next day. So May 14th, David Ben-Gurion makes the declaration. May 15th, 5 Arab nations declared war. Now, the Arabs, Palestinian Arabs, had already declared war. They declared war when the United Nations passed that plan, which would have been the fall of 1947. They were already engaged in battle. Militias were attacking. It was violent. Blood was being shed. It was terrible. But the Jews accepted the plan, and then 5 Arab nations declared war. I go back to my question. What would have happened had the Arabs accepted that partition plan that the United Nations put forth in 1947? What would have happened? Answer: the Arab people would be a nation, and the Jews would be a nation. We would have today a 2-state solution. And there would not be the problem of the Middle East that we have today. But because they flat out rejected it, and then 5 Arab nations declared war, what ensued was what is now known as the War of Independence, which was violent. You can imagine now you have a nation not 1 day old taking on 5 established armies with air forces and tanks, and this nation is 1 day old. And interestingly, no country would support them militarily, not even the United States. The sentiment in the United States was that, we've had enough of supporting war and we're not going to do that. The United States would not support them. But, however, and this is an important point, the president of the United States at the time was Harry Truman. And Truman was a Christian. And so he told his staff that when that declaration, he was well anticipated, when that declaration was to happen, he was to be alerted no matter what time of the day or night, and he was going to rush down and be the first to recognize Israel as a state. And so they awoke Truman from his sleep, I think at 3 or 4 in the morning. He quickly dressed and went down and got on state radio and recognized the state of Israel. So that's the official recognition. However, it was not official until that was declared sometime later. It was a statement of intent. The Soviets, however, were the first to officially recognize Israel. Now you might say, "This, why would the Soviets?" They voted in favor of that UN plan. And they were the first official state or nation to recognize Israel. Why would the Soviets be interested? Answer: because there were so many of the kibbutzim that were socialists, they had in their mind that this newly arising state would be socialist and would therefore be in the sphere of socialism. Well, that did not turn out to be the case, of course. They turned out to be a strongly democratic government, as we know today. So it wasn't too many years later that the Soviets reversed course. But back to my point, because this is very important when we talk about the modern Palestinian problem, that war of independence is the crux point of it all. 5 Arab nations declare war. The Palestinian Arabs have already been fighting. No nation on the world will support Israel with arms. Well, now there is one. There was one and one only. And that nation was Czechoslovakia. Of all things, Czechoslovakia. And they were later asked, why did you stand with Israel? We know what it's like. Nazis took us over. We understood it. And we couldn't stand by idly and do nothing. That was the only nation. Interestingly, side story, I was on a plane one time flying to Israel, and I happened to be sitting next to this fellow who was Jewish. And so, what are you doing? Why are you going to Israel? He asked me. Oh, I'm leading a group. Oh, that's very interesting. And tell me about why you're interested. We're Christians. We, talked about that. And I said, and I teach a class called the History of the Modern Palestinian Problem as part of our series of classes we do every summer. And he said, oh, really? We've got time. Give me the class. Fine. So I'm going through very much like I'm doing here now. He really wanted to hear an American, a Western perspective. Right? So he's like, I want to know your thoughts. So I'm giving it to him. And we get to that part about Czechoslovakia. And he goes, wait. Now I understand something. When I joined the army, because he fought in 3 or 4 wars, when I first joined the army, they gave me a Czech rifle. And I had no idea what a Czech, why am I getting a Czech rifle? What is it, Czech? What does it mean, Czech rifle? He thought, check this, check that. He didn't know what a Czech rifle was. He says, until this moment, when you told me, I see, it's a Czechoslovakian rifle. Now I get it. Anyway, a side note, I found it interesting. Israel got some rifles and ammunition from Czechoslovakia. There were a lot of planes that were now surplus that were being purchased. United States had made it illegal to supply arms to Israel, but there were, let's say, clever individuals that were purchasing planes from the surplus stores, flying them to, I believe they flew them to Mexico, and then they flew them to Czechoslovakia, where they were re-registered and flown to Israel. And so they're trying to build up something. They got nothing. I think their first Air Force was like a few Piper Cubs or something, outfitted with some. And Egypt has an Air Force. So no one in their minds thought that Israel could survive this thing. No one thought they would survive it. They thought it would be the next Holocaust on the heels of the most recent one. But they did survive it, as we know. And not only did they survive it, they expanded the borders that were determined because war provided the opportunity. And they took it. They went and expanded the borders.